Hello everyone, this is Shining Noctiles, and tonight I want to do a kind of a video I've been wanting to do for a wee while now. This video um, has kind of been on my mind for quite some time now, and I've done some other videos where I've kind of touched on it a wee bit, but I figured I'd do it again just to kind of really hone in on kind of what I wanted to do on my last video in regards to kind of breaking the quote unquote Asian stereotype of Native Americans or indigenous Native American Indians. And the reason why I want to do this is because I have noticed not only from uh, what's commonly kind of commonly shared, in different kinds of media, but also with a lot of my Asian American friends, particularly um, some that I've known, of Chinese or Vietnamese descent. Nothing wrong with that. But a lot of them they don't even know what who Indigenous Native Americans are. They just they'll ask me, how Asian are you? And I have to tell them that well, it depends what kind of Asian do you mean, because just like how there are many different kinds of Europeans in Europe, like Italians, Norwegians, Irish, Scottish, Germans, Spanish, Greeks. It's the same thing when Trojans or Anatolians. The same thing is true for people in Asia. You have not only Chinese, but well, you have Japanese, Koreans, Indonesians, Japanese, and Thai people as well, Cambodians, and many others. And I think it's just kind of important to really break a stereotype that's kind of been, um, that's really kind of overshadowed, some of the elements of who really some of the indigenous people of both, not only the Americas, but also of even East Asia are in a sense. And the reason why I say this is because the Ainu or they are kind of a mix of not only Jomon, and Jomon are the indigenous people of Japan who have lived in Japan for over 10,000 years. But they are also a mix of the Otosk people, and the Otosk are, from what I've read, Siberians who came a bit further from the north, and they had migrated down south into Japan, and they had mixed with the Jomon. And the Atosk are most related to the or one of the groups they're related to is the I think the Ninvik people, and the Ninvik were people in Manchuria. So here's an image of them. But yes, it was kind of like a merging of two cultures that had come together. And when I think of the people from Siberia, and then the Jomon, kind of coming together to eventually make the Ainu. It kind of makes me think of like the Athabascans or Athapaskins. I learned that that's in Athapascan, even though it's spelled with a B, you pronounce it like a P. So that's one thing I learned, and it's interesting because it's I'm gonna try to see how I can explain this the best way I can. When I was looking at some of my like ancient DNA samples a wee while back, and I'll see if I can pull it up here. Hopefully, you guys can see this. Give me a moment. I'm gonna check something here. Oh, my bad. Seems like I didn't realize I was streaming on a different screen. My bad. Let me get this here. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I guess I was capturing the wrong screen by accident there. Give me a second. Let me set this up. Got a little bit carried away there. That happens to the best of us. Give me a moment. Alright, let me pull this up here. Yeah, sometimes I, I can kind of get a little bit carried away when I'm sharing things, but rest assured I will do what I can to kind of bring things back in to focus. Just kind of like to set this up beforehand. Alright. And this is the last one for now. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see this now. And what we're gonna do is we're going to pull something else up real quick. Alright. Alright, hopefully you guys can see this. Okay. So, when I was, I have sometimes used a website called Genome Link, actually. And there was one time where it gave me kind of like a free sample test that I could use to kind of see what ancient samples I was related to. And as you can see here, well, hopefully you can see it. Yeah. So one of the samples I was related to was a Japanese potter from around, last I checked, it was around 4,000 years ago. And the Japanese potter was related to the Jomon people of Hokkaido. And I think this was before the Otosk uh, had come to Japan or had come to settle on the isle, because I don't think the Otosk came until a little bit later. When did Otosk come to Japan? 5th century, yes. So it seems like they would have come a little bit later. But let me see if I can pull up the Jomon here. Let's see. Because like, let's see here. Also gonna widen the screen. Um, so as you can see here, right now I don't have full access to this, but it talks about that the sample was found from a Jomon hunter-gatherer man whose remains were unearthed at the Funa Domori Shell Mound archaeological site in the northern part of Reborn Island, Hokkaido. His remains were found together with a female skeleton, and only the latter was radiocarbon dated to be around 4,000 years old, indicating that they had lived in the late Jomon period, which talks about the mitochondrial DNA being part of N9B1, and the Y DNA was of D1B2B. And I'll see if I can pull up Ruben Island here. So you can see it's actually, yeah, it's off the coast of Hokkaido. It's not too far away. Then if you look at I think there was a kind of kind of the, like there was like a image I had found of Japan that kind of would tell you the different DNA during different eras of Japan. But at least the sample I was related to would be related to the sample at the bottom here, with D4, D4H2. And in the previous video, I spoke about how like my dad's maternal lineage, through my um, grandmother Pama and then my great grandmother Lita, it had come really from a rare, not to toot my own horn, but it came from a relatively rare Native American lineage. It would have been D4H3, which is only really in, at least from what they say, in only 2% of all Native Americans, um, in the present era. But this ancient kind of mitochondrial DNA was really, it traces pretty much back not only to the Pacific Northwest, over almost 10,000 years ago, but it also traces to the Jomon. And even though, at least for the the mitochondrial DNA, it's D4H3 instead of D4H2. It's pretty much, it's almost the same. It's only like to me this just symbolizes the split between the Jomon who stayed in the Jomon that had stayed in Japan, and then the ones who had continued on ahead, into the Americas. And what's interesting that I find is that I think I pulled up the mitochondrial DNA that was. Let me see if I can pull it up here. T. So you see how when you look at like D4H2, so that would have been connected to the Jomon in Hokkaido during that era. You see the Ulchi people. The Ulchi, they had lived. See if I can pull this up here. It says here the Ulch people are indigenous people of the Russian Far East, or pretty much Siberia, speak a Tungusic language known as Ulch. And then here's some images of them. And then when I looked at D4H3 specifically, because again it's very close. It's almost like a one for one. But here, D4H3 in this case, it talks about the Tayun people of Thailand. And I remember one time I'll see if I can link a video or linked to a video that I watched. Basically, there's a Japanese YouTuber I watch sometimes, and his name is Takashi, and he was interviewing a Japanese who had essentially went to Thailand, and she shared her experiences with him, and I think they both agreed that they felt like they had never left Tokyo when they had went to Thailand, and they had gone to or she had settled in Bangkok. And what's interesting is if you notice how you have the Taiyun people here, and then you have I'm going to see if I can pull up the Ulchi people, just to give you guys a kind of comparison. So here's the Ulchi, Taiyun. You see, um, even though there might be, you know, slight differences as far as like, because of, weather conditions and there are other factors, of course. The reality stands that both the Ulchi and the Taiyun are both related. And this goes back to really not necessarily the Han or Yayoi people who had come into, well, at least that had come into Japan later on, at least the Yayoi for sure, and then the Kofun. But also the really goes back to the Jomon who it goes back, tens of thousands of years. And I think it's important to share it because I think a lot of people they don't really, you know, I think they tend to, put Asians and even Native Americans all in one box, and then but they have to remember just like how Europe and of course Africa are diverse. So is Asia and the especially as you get further east and then um, the Native Americas. But yeah, no, I'm trying to share this as coherently as I can. Hopefully, it makes sense because I it's a lot of new ground for me myself as well. But I'm trying my best to really to share it as best as I can. And then you can see here, um, N9B is traces back to Japan of around 4,000 years ago. But it also traces with other groups of people as well. And I'll see if I can kind of find them here. You have samples in Arabia, India, and I'm trying to see where they say the origin. Low frequencies in sub-Saharan Africa, oldest clades in Asia and Australia, uh, Cambodia, Vietnam, Uyghur, indigenous Australians. So there you go. Florisians of Indonesia. Uh, but you get the gist as far as there being um, you know I'm going to try to see how I can explain it the best way I can. There's multiple different origins, that also even trace into Polynesia and Australia. And I think there was a an article I had read. I'll see if I can pull it up here. Um, Let me see. Uh, Green Shinto. Let's see if I can just open up a few more tabs because I like to kind of share quite a bit. Japan. Um, right. So yeah, there and I actually had shared this with my Uncle Herman a wee while back. This article was talking about how the Japanese Matsuri festivals resemble um, festivals kind of demonstrated in Bali. And Bali is actually a country, I believe in Indonesia actually. Yes, that is true. Um, and it talks about how um, during the cremations in Bali, the dead bodies carried on a portable shrine, very much in the way that the Japanese carry their mikoshi. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. Mikoshi. And the mikoshi is right here. Kind of reminds me of the Namazu kind of mount in 14. But yes, this is a mikoshi, and I guess the Bali version would be something very similar. Yes. Balinese funerals are joyful and people swinging the portable shrine in the streets are making loud noises to scare the evil spirits. Basically, Balinese religion is a form of Hinduism that has incorporated the Aborigine animist religion. And they talk about how the Jomon even had some kind of a South Asian connection or Canadian, not Canadian, connection to South Asians in India. So. and related to indigenous folk there. But it says here, because I think there was a language in India that was very similar to the Japanese language. I'll have to see if I can find it. And I think it was, I thought it was Tamal or Tamil, Dravidian language. And this could also be another kind of link with the potential connection between the Jomon and the yeah, it could but there could and I'm trying to see how I can describe this as best as I can, but it's one of those things where I'll see if I can pull this up here. The research professor Ano asserted that both Tamil and Japanese share a common ancestry, linguistics, sounds, words, grammar, literature. One researched the Yayoi burials of Japan with the megalithic burials of South India and Sri Lanka. The study revealed remarkable similarities in pottery, burial habits, and graffiti marks between the two cultures. Uh, there's a strong probability for the existence of a relationship between Tamil and Japanese. In order to prove this, it is necessary to present a long list of corresponding words strictly supported by sound laws to clarify grammatical structures between both languages. Japanese language is an agglutinative language, as is the Tamil language. In Japanese, the adjective comes before the noun, then the adverb before the verb. Um, then it shares different kind of connections there. But no, let's continue with this, and I'll see how I can tie this in later on with the connection with the Native American Indians, because it all kind of connects, but try my best to get it all situated. Basically, Balinese religion is a form of Hinduism. Yeah, I read that. For example, both Balinese temples and Japanese shrines, as well as traditional Japanese Balinese houses, have a wall surrounding them originally meant to prevent evil spirits from penetrating the property. Despite the radical changes that Indonesian culture underwent after the introduction of Islam, Christianity, and the changes that Buddhism brought to Japan, it's still possible to observe clear similarities between the supposed original prehistoric cultures of the two archipelagos. Things get even weirder when one considers the linguistic connection. From a linguistic point of view, Bahasa Indonesia, Malaysia, and Japan, Japanese language share only a few similarities, but nonetheless striking ones. Apart from the very similar pronunciation of both languages, there's the same hierarchical differences in personal pronouns. For example, use either anda or kamu, with the same meaning in usage as anata and kimi in Japanese. Likewise, the Japanese verb suki, to like, translates suka in Bahasa. Such similarities are probably more than mere coincidences and may reveal a common origin. The Paleolithic Jomon people appear to have come from Australasia during the Ice Age, before Japan was resettled by Bronze Age rice farmers from the continent. The Chinese had, and that would have been the coming of the Yayoi and then the Kolfin that had come later. The Chinese had previously expanded southward to Southeast Asia. The original inhabitants of Indonesia and the Philippines may have been related to Dravidians of southern India. Why haplogroup C, which has been associated with the first migration of modern humans out of Africa towards Asia, and it's also present in the Mongols as well, is relatively frequent in Kerala, southern tip of India, and Borneo. These early Austronesians are thought to have been the ancestors of the Ice Age settlers of Japan. So there we have it. Jomon Japanese have a southern Austronesian origin. Jomon era was roughly from 15,000 before Common Era to 300. So what's that got to do with modern Japan? Well, Jomon never died out, or as my uncle Herman would say, the Jomon still live. Um, but were simulated into the immigrant waves from Korea and China that created the Yayoi culture. Research has shown that 43% of modern Japanese carry a Y chromosome of Jomon origin. The Polynesian roots of the Japanese live on, and they're evident in the form of the modern Shinto too. And you can see the shrine uh, here, um, that's present in Japan. And the Mapuche actually have a similar looking shrine as well. I'll see if I can pull that up. But the haplogroup they're talking about when they talk about the Jomon ancestry, not only from the mitochondrial ancestry, but also from the paternal line, it would come from haplogroup D. I'll see if I can pull this up here. Now, for the Native American Indians, at least from what I've gathered, and it's part of my ancestry too, since I have some Native American ancestry. Hyopatia, Cherokee elder, or well, um, she's was born with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, but she's actually not only Cherokee but also Lakota, Mayan, Hawaiian, and even a wee bit of Irish. She actually calls me a rainbow warrior, and because even though I didn't necessarily grow up, um, in one of the kind of federally recognized Native American nations, I still have some ancestry that traces, through my lineage, particularly from my dad's side of the family, through his not only through his mother's line, but also through some of his father's lineage as well. And and so even though I wouldn't necessarily meet the whole blood quantum requirements or and all that jazz, because my ancestry is like native lineage is around 15%, 15, 16%. And it's interesting because my birthday is actually on the 15th of May. So 15 there is, I feel like it's a special number. I know one time when I met when I still lived in Florida, my mom had a friend, or um, my mom's friend Maxie. He had a Japanese friend that he came over, and he was trying to tell me the significance of numbers for some of the Japanese. That for him, it's and I think it tied into uh, the Shinto beliefs that numbers for him weren't just uh, meant in terms of computation, but it was also um, it meant spiritual things as well. And like number zero represented kind of like the void or the kind of creation, and number three was kind of like the Trinity. And I think the some of the Mayans also saw numerology very similarly in some ways as well, which is interesting, to say the very least. Um, but anyways, and actually I'm gonna see if I can share an image of a Mayan elder, and his name is Tata Pedro Cruz Maya, and one of his famous quotes is "Never, no matter what happens, everything with love." And there's another quote that actually kind of coincides with what Tata, the Mayan Native American elder, was saying. Here's this man here, Morihi, or let me see if I can pronounce it right. Morihie Ueshiba. And one of his famous quotes that said, or that he said rather, is, I'll see if I can share it here. So The true meaning of the samurai is one who serves and adheres to the power of love. So you notice how even though it seems like, you know, uh, uh, Morihei and Data, even though it seems like they have come from two very distinct cultures, one from Japan and the other from the Mayans, you see how the very principle of love is something that connects both their cultures, which in my and even if you look at both of them, you know, you look at Morihei and Tata, they look very similar, actually. See if I can get a better image of him. You see how, oops, my bad. See if I can pull this up again. Sometimes this happens. So you see Tata and Morihei, how they almost resemble each other, really, in my opinion. And to me, this really comes from not necessarily the Yayoi lineage. Nothing wrong with that. Actually, it was interesting how somehow I was connected to the Fujiwara clan through some ancestry I had from Italy. It just shows how, maybe somehow a Yayoi 3,000 years ago somehow found his way into Italy, or at least one person that carried that paternal line. Um, but anyways, Morihei and Tata, they they probably have a connection through the Jomon that believe it's important to recognize. Yeah, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, Morihei. Uh, Ueshiba. I'm not the I'm not the most perfect in Japanese, but I try my best. Fortunately, speak Spanish, and I spoke to this Japanese YouTuber who was filming a kind of the. I'll see if I can find the video. But she was doing a kind of interview with the people of Hokkaido, and she actually responded back to me in Espanol, in Spanish, and she told me that since I knew how to speak Spanish, the vowel sounds in Japanese a, I, E, o, U is almost the same as Spanish. I think the only difference is like I think the U is slightly different, but to me I don't um, you know of course there's going to be differences, but to me it's not something that's is going to make or break things. But anyways, she told me that since I knew how to speak Spanish, that it'd make it a lot easier for me to speak Japanese. And so and actually when I went to Japan, the Japanese they treated me pretty well. I learned to do what I could to speak in their language, and they seemed to really appreciate it. And I actually got invited to eat with a Japanese family in Tokyo when we were at a sushi bar, and I was trying, I would try to order water in Japanese, and I would say mizu, and even though it seems like just a common word, mizu, I think it was just enough for them to say, oh, he can speak a bit of our language, and so and I think they also appreciated my energy as well, but they just wanted to invite me over and wanted me to eat with them, and it's a very nice thing indeed. Other than the Mayans and the Mayan and the connection with Morihei, um, there's also a Quechua kind of saying, Munaiki, and Munaiki is really the key is actually in Quechua and Japanese. It's essentially the same meaning as far as energy, but Munaiki really means the universal energy of love. So now you have the connection not only with the Japanese or the Jomon and the Japanese roots with the Mayans, but now you have it also with the Quechua. And the Quechua are essentially the descendants of the Incas and before Inca of Peru and Bolivia and other parts of South America. And so now I know you all may be asking me that okay, so you've made a connection with um, Native American tribes, south of the border, in Guatemala and further down south in South America. So what's the connection with the tribes also in the north? Okay. Well, the interesting thing is that, and I think I did this in my previous video. If you look at the Native American haplogroups, and as Hypopatia says, the Native American tribes are mainly matrilineal, so most of their ancestry, goes through their mother's lines, actually. If you look at the four major groups, A, B, C, and D, and of course X is there too, and as well as other. But if you look at the major four, um, you notice how, as you start getting into, uh, you know, further down to the southwest, and especially into Mexico and further down, you see kind of this merging of A and B. And it's interesting, well, it says here Southern Diné Navajo, which would be related to the Navajo and I believe also the Apache. What people don't understand is that, people migrate beyond borders. And, the elder Tata, he could have had, to me, when I look at him, it reminded me a bit of the Haida elders also in the Pacific Northwest. And I think some of the Pacific Northwest Native Americans, they say that the Mexicans are just like us. They just walked further down south. To me, when I look at him, I can see both a connection of the North and the South that have both merged. And I know some people might say, well, how do you know that? How can you tell? And to me, I can just I know there's a Mayan elder, another one. His name is Hanabatsman, and I like him. He has such a good heart. I know Hanabatsman. He always talks about the face being kind of like um, our face being like a representation of the sun. It's interesting how he kind of describes it. He has I believe he has since passed to the other world. But when I look, of course, when I look at Hanabatsman, I automatically think, he looks like someone that has more of a, maybe like a connection to, well, haplogroup B, but also like to like Hawaiians or, you know, um, some people might say Philippines as well, but I just kind of see like maybe like a Hawaiian elder when I look at Hanabatsman. Um, you know, I'll see if I can get a better image. Yeah. When I look at him, it could be like Hawaiian. I know he mentioned Tibet in one of his videos. It could even also be South India as well. But when I look at people, you know, I'm trying to see how I can. I'm trying to bring it down to earth because sometimes it can be hard to kind of explain it. but I just kind of feel their energetic field, and I, see, okay, what what connection, or what could be this person's potential origin? Because even though it says they're both Mayan, people have to understand, both, two people can be Mayan, but one could also have a connection to Alaska, and the other could have a connection to, um, Indonesia or something, So, there's different frequencies that are kind of shared, and so I think it's important to understand those messages. And yeah, because I'm gonna see if I can pull up a Haida elder. Let me see. Let's see. Because there was one Haida elder that it reminded me a little bit of Tata. And essentially, you already saw how he was connected to Morihie. But there was another one that kind of reminded me of him, that there could have been maybe like a connection of some kind. I'll see if I can find it here. Let's see. You can definitely see it here for sure, though. I'll see if I can. Yes. And so that's why, like, when I would watch videos of some of the Native Americans, from the federally recognized nations in the US and Canada, when they would say, or the quote unquote Mexicans, and what they mean when they say Mexicans is really any indigenous Native Americans of Latin America. You know, they're not just all Mexicans. It's like imagine saying, everyone's a Cherokee. I know a lot of people want to say I'm Cherokee, I'm Cherokee, I'm Cherokee, but no, there's more than just the Cherokee. There's Lakota, there's Crow, there's Hopi, there's I see the Hopi say, hey, he's representing, you know. Yeah, but no, like not everyone's just Cherokee, just like not everyone's just Mexican. I think there's even the U.S. alone, there was like over 560 federally recognized tribes, and if you count all the tribes together, I wouldn't be surprised if there were over 10,000 of them. You know, so I think it's important to kind of detangle some of this understanding, and understand that people are, well, migratory, essentially. And speaking of migratory, I think even when I was, you know, I, I can even do it for myself. I have my dad pulled up here because I did his ancestral test. The interesting thing that I found out, the difference with my dad and I, and I guess this shows how sometimes you can inherit ancestry from your grandparents that you may not always from your parents. Is I noticed that for me, I inherited like a bit of, like, here it shows up. I have Inuit, Canada, Dorset, and I think there's also Sequoia, Greenland. And I got that for my kind of ancestral matches, but my dad didn't for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why. Um, but yes, and then you can see here they were related to the Roroi Cognate, Roronin Cognate, and then Saka and Mongol Horde. At least, groups they would have been connected to. And then I think this would be connected to the Inuit people who were some of the last natives, quote unquote, who had crossed into the Americas and had settled in the Arctic. Um, so you can see even though it says like I'm not as like I don't have as high of a percentage with the with the Inuit as I do with other native groups, it is still there. It is still there's a connection. And so I'm trying to I'm trying to see how I can break this down. But no, it just shows how you know even though like my dad's side of the family, even though his lineage, before, his ancestors had come from Europe, from Germany, Ireland, Spain, different places. Um, you know, when his ancestors had mixed with the natives, that became part of the lineage. And so, through, like my dad's, great grandmother, or not, well, his grandmother, his mother, then also I think partly through my dad's paternal ancestry, there was this kind of a merge of Native American ancestry that um, that just became part of the fabric. And I think it's important to understand that the natives, they just, it's not like they were always in Colombia or they were always in just one part of South America or Mexico or whatever, and that was it. No, they had migrated to different places. And you can even see here how, even though I do have some matches here from Mexico, as far as like samples that are more going back to, um, the indigenous roots, I was more so related to people, that were, crossing through the Bering Strait, Athapaskins, and then also, there's also Algonquin and Iroquois. Iroquois are related to the Cherokee. And then later on you get like Chaco Canyon, but this, it's further down below. And then it had a connection to Mayans. And then here's ancient Peru. But it just shows how, you know, this thing about, I'm gonna try to see how I can break it down. Um, People just have to understand that, you know, the natives, they weren't just constrained to one area. They just moved like anyone else, you know? Like if you see like the migration patterns of Europe and Africa, like people moved. They didn't just stay in Egypt forever. They didn't just stay in even Greece or um, Russia or wherever. Or Poland or they or Ireland. They migrated. They they moved. It's very simple. Um, um, but yeah, no, so where am I going with this? Okay, so I'm trying to get the words out. It's just sometimes it takes time for me to get it out. Um, for example, like with the Peruvian sample I was matched to from like 9,000 years ago, like so with the Japanese sample, I had like a point 0.5 shared DNA sample with it. And some people may not think that's a lot, but it is in the sense that it's in particular with that particular sample. Um, but I'm gonna see if I can pull up the Peruvian Ice Maiden sample because I think you guys will find this interesting. Because I had like a 0.3% shared DNA connection, and that's actually quite a bit again because it's with that particular sample. It's kind of like if you look at MyHeritage and it'll tell you your 0.3%, you have a 0.3% share DNA with like a Morik Johnson or whatever, and that's actually quite a bit because it's not just 0.3% ethnicity, it's no, you're 0.3% related to this specific person, you know. So this the same applies here. So here it says here, the CP29 sample comes from a remain of an 18 to 25-year-old woman of the Paleo-American hunter-gatherer population from the Andes. Her skeleton was discovered in the Cuncaicha rock shelter in Peru, a key archaeological site for understanding human colonization of the Andes. The remains were radiocarbon dated to be from around 9,000 years ago. The early Holocene DNA was extracted from her radius arm bone. Her mitochondrial haplogroup is A2A0. And why is this all so important? People might say, what does that have to do with anything? But I'll see if I can pull it up here to show you guys the connection. So you see here, talks about subclade A2. Let's see if I can. This is the most common haplogroup among the Inuit, the Dene, also Athabascans. Yeah. Lineage belonging to haplogroup A2 also comprise majority of the mitochondrial pool. The Chukchi, and you can see here they had come from also connected to Russia, or really Siberia. Let's see here. So you see here A2. I know the Inuit, or they don't like they don't like the word Eskimo because it means raw fish eater. But see here, Chukchi, um, Apache, and maybe this is why when I was looking at different kind of like the closest population groups that's the Quechua had, some of the groups were Apache and Navajo, and maybe this is a reason why because even 9,000 years ago, I know they said the Navajo and Apache they didn't come into the Southwest until relatively recent, like around well in Native American history, like I believe it was like 700 years ago. But there were people related to this group maternally even before the Ne, because really when I think about like the Ne saying that they're newcomers, I think that comes more so from their paternal lineage, not so much from the maternal lineage, because maternal lineage would have still been, I'd imagine, would have been the same throughout thousands of years. But the paternal lineage, I think what changed was haplogroup C is and that would have been more so a connection with the Mongols. And I have a friend, an old friend named Jess, where I had a vision of her, and I think she was related to the Wolf Clan tribe of the Pacific Northwest. And she would say in a vision, you know, uh, you know, I I am related to the Mongols, but I'm not a descendant of Genghis Khan, and that was a big part of history. And why is this also important? Because it's important to like I think I read some people speculate that the Dene people may have migrated, out of they migrated out of Asia or East Asia when there was kind of like the big turmoil, happening with Genghis Khan and his legions or however you want to call it. And yeah, they had moved, and this is probably what propelled the some of the migrations of the Dene people potentially, or at least haplogroup C for sure, because haplogroup Q, um, you know, at least paternally is more so like from what I gather, is the original paternal ancestor of the Native American Indians, and then later on you have the kind of haplogroup C that came in. Um, And I think I'm gonna see how we can look at this real quick. Let's see here. Let's see. Yeah, so if you look at the groups with the highest amount of haplogroup C, you see Tana, Na, Dog-Reb, Tlingit, Cheyenne, Apache, Athabascan, Sioux, and yeah, so to me, I think that the paternal lineage, um, it's it changed over the course of probably when the Navajo were eventually coming down south and things like that, and the Apache. But really, the paternal ancestry, haplogroup A, has been there for thousands of years. So when people say, how did how do you see this Athapascan lineage in Peru, of all places, 9,000 years ago, well before the Navajo and Apache, well before they had even come into the Southwest? And that's because, that maternal lineage was always there. It was there well before the the haplogroup C related to the Mongols. Or I know some people might say the Yellow Man or things like that, but no, it was there well before, and so yeah, that's important to kind of to recognize that. Um, and again, for me, I think like when I think of my Native American lineage, I feel like it's like a mix of red and yellow. I know the Hopi they would see themselves as the red man and the Navajo as the yellow man. But I think it's important to kind of see that there are distinctions there, and to see the diversity of the rainbow rather than just saying, oh, it just has to be one thing. Um, but yeah, let me see if I can. Uh, I'm going to see what else I kind of want to share about regarding this because I spoke about the Mongols, the Ainu, the Polynesians as well, South Indians. And then it was also the Jomon connection was also talking about Indonesia and Bali. I think I watched a video where they were talking about how there was a Native American Colombian elder that when she was speaking with I think someone from Java, how she felt like she was almost like a sister. And so you see how the connection with the natives and the and people across the ocean is not just regulated to one part of Asia, but it stretches from as far north as Siberia to as far south as well, really, Polynesia, Southeast Asia, and even India. Um, and I think okay, so I was gonna look at the Mapuche shrine here. Let me see if I can pull it up. Because there was a shrine that really, or even if you look at the kind of the structures of the Mapuche, uh, and I'm gonna pull up the Ainu here because I know they did a connection already with the Haida and Ainu, which is a good thing. It definitely is, but um, there's even another connection too with the Ainu where kind of like their buildings are or their dwellings is almost the exact same as the Mapuche. It's almost a one for one. See, it's almost built like the exact same way for the most part. And then even if you look at the, I'm gonna pull up the fire, the kind of connection with fire with the Ainu. The Mapuche also have a very similar connection to fire. Just kind of, I'll see if I can pull it up. Let me look here. So let me see. See, see if I can get a better image. So you see how there's a very, I know it seems like it's a very simple thing to say. It's like, people might say, well, fire has been kind of a mainstay of humanity for millennia, but when you look at the energy of the Ainu and of the Mapuche, they have a similar connection to fire, and I think it's important to recognize that. Um, yes, yeah. All right. So trying to think what else I wanted to share. I think. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is with the Quechua and the and the Ainu, or at least the Japanese language and the Quechua language. When you know, like there are some words that are almost one for one. Like when you think about the word, I already talked about munaiki and ki, being the same in both Japanese um and Quechua. I'll have to see if it's the same in not Mapuche and uh, the word for energy in Ainu. Is it also ki? Let's see. Because I know they do say the Ainu language and the Japanese language, they are different in some ways, but I'm sure there is probably an intersection there, that traces back to the Jomon. But anyways, there are some words like ente, and ente means Lord of Flames in Japanese. Um, but i- in Quechua, NT is essentially like the Sun Emperor, and it's almost like the same exact meaning. The Lord of Flames and the Sun Emperor, or kind of this connection to fire. Really, both are connected with both the Quechua and the Japanese, and probably it goes back to the Jomon as well, the Ainu and the Jomon both. 'Cause they would have um, they yeah they would have come excuse me, yeah, they would have come even before the Inca, which would have been several thousand years ago. But yes, and then it all kind of um, best way I can say it, it all kind of intersects if you look at the history closely enough. But yeah, no, I think I'm gonna wrap up the video here soon. I just kind of wanted to share a bit of this because I think it's important to really break these stereotypes and to really help people understand that that things are wider than they believe. But I think that'll be it for now, guys. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and hope you guys learned something. And I'll be off for now. Bye for now, guys. Bye for now.